Oh, so you have a favorite video game series you've been a fan of for years, with a cast of characters you love? Well, that's unfortunate. Don't worry, as a parting gift, you do get to have a front row seat to watch your favorite series drastically altered by ignorant bureaucrats who have proclaimed themselves to be on the right side of history. Welcome to Deep Thoughts While Gaming. I'm Chris Chappell. And today we are diving into the murky depths created by those three notorious and ideologically driven letters, DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. After over a decade of waiting, fans were thrilled to hear that Alan Wake, a genre-defying action-adventure survival horror, was finally getting a sequel. The disturbing tale begins 13 years after Alan chose to make the ultimate sacrifice by trapping himself within the alternate dimension known as the Dark Place, in an effort to save his wife Alice from the outcome of his calamitous writing. Alan is looking a little worse for wear, as he grapples with the effects of the Dark Place deep within the neighboring forests of Bright Falls, a collection of gruesome, ritualistic murders based on Alan's writing are reported, drawing the attention of two FBI agents already investigating his dubious disappearance. Nope, not them. Them. Oh yes, you thought you'd get to play as Alan Wake in an Alan Wake game? No! For a good portion of the game, you'll be playing as FBI Special Agent Saga Anderson, who has psychic powers and no inherent character flaws. Well, she had one flaw. She originally wasn't diverse enough, which is why late in production, they race-swapped the actress playing her. This is the game Alan Wake fans wanted. But that wasn't the only change. The gameplay shifted from the original survival horror mechanics of the first game to what might be best described as a semi-interactive film. While some fans have embraced the shift away from combat toward clue collection and stylized cinematics, the changes have left many fans confused and unsure exactly what to say about the final design of the game after awaiting its arrival for 13 years. Alan Wake 2 was stuck in production hell, a decade of pitch failures and funding complications. And so, the developers, Remedy Entertainment, enlisted the help of the now infamous diversity, equity, and inclusion consultancy group, Sweet Baby Inc. And we're suddenly on the fast track to completion with an army of, game journalists behind them. Sweet Baby Inc. has been involved in some of your favorite games, God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man 2, Usual Jude. They describe themselves as diversifying and enriching the video games industry, making it more inclusive for everyone. While splitting the focus between two protagonists can work in select cases, doing so relies heavily on the intrigue and likability of both characters. It creates more demands on quality gameplay and storyline to keep players engaged. Skin-deep character changes, stereotype-inspired archetypes awkwardly thrust into existing designs, and clunky or cliché dialogue elements to fill a title's cinematics is not how you make it work. But the simplistic change to Saga's race from a woman of Finnish descent to that of a biracial woman of a more praised and diverse nature did create buzz on all sides of the issue. And no publicity is bad publicity, right? While this is not inherently what made Alan Wake 2 infinitely more lackluster than it should have been, for many, such DEI alterations are a canary in the coal mine, alerting the public of what may very well be a poorly designed game to begin with, attempting to hide its defects under the protection of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those three words on face value can appear harmless when not considered any further. Kinda like that hot dog you just purchased from an unscrupulous street vendor. But derived from a deeply dogmatic variation of Marxist ideology, DEI insists on categorizing human beings into faceless social groupings, pitting them against each other in a zero-sum game for perceived power. Often this is accomplished by simplifying every interaction as the oppressed fighting against an oppressor, while at the same time forcibly manipulating outcomes under the banner of equity. Within this modernistic take on the failed 20th century philosophy, those deemed as oppressors can be abused, hated, and scapegoated as the catalyst of all society's woes for simply existing. And those deemed the oppressed must be defended from all criticism and praised as if sacred and virtuous, even when failing or acting appallingly. No criticism, all praise? I can see why a game developer with no real ideas would like this. This extraordinarily simplistic summarization of human society not only removes all individual agency, it fans the flames of supremacy from the sparks of constantly reinforced resentment in the oppressed class, while encouraging those being scapegoated in the oppressor class to grow resentful of their supposedly moral betters. This is not unlike Alan and the Dark Presence, vying for power to swap places between worlds, forcing one into the dark place so that the other might escape at the expense of the former, creating a time spiral, if you will. The gaming community, since its meteoric rise in the late 1980s, has been a collection of socially othered people from around the world, embracing interesting characters and cultures. They were the nerds, the outcasts, background, economic status, race, body type. None of it matters in gaming. It isn't important who or what a person is, just that they are real gamers. The outsiders, if you will. And with it came an inherent distrust of authority and greedy corporations, trying to change the medium against the will of the gaming public, or distort quality experiences with their political obsessions and gluttonous monetary grabs. Ah, loot boxes. In the world of gaming, meritocracy is king, and each title is given their shot to grab the market's attention. Only through actual talent can true notoriety be achieved. Without the realities of a meritocratic marketplace of ideas, where quality was no longer the driving factor in the design of new titles, the medium would swiftly starve. The market would be inevitably damaged, and the majority of games produced would be a propagandized mess seeking to hammer down the tallest nails. Ah, Carl would be so proud. But what happens if you have an ideology that informs you that what people like is wrong? That it's too sexual, too masculine, too white? Then it's up to you to control the narrative. Unfortunately, as seen with a multitude of other media formats in recent years, those who dictate the narrative are in constant conflict to maintain control of the community, something gamers are inherently opposed to. In response, DEI consultants have leveraged design houses, by their own admission, through threats, extortion, and governmental organizations. Governments working to control entertainment? Nope, I've never seen that before. While such consultancy groups often claim to help games ensure quality stories and experiences, they, unfortunately, only succeed in the most simplistic and surface-level categorizations of humankind, endlessly encouraging unoriginal alteration to franchises through simplistic pandering. SBI have, by their own admission, used social and economic extortion tactics when strong-arming game design companies into working with them. Sweet Baby Inc.'s CEO urged employees to, quote, terrify video game companies if they don't, quote, give you what you want. In truth, not all titles are created equal, and not all writers and designers are as equally talented or respected, which is why E.T. has only been remembered as the game that Atari quite literally buried in a landfill. Overkill, you ask? Not if you've played the game. To those who have historically seen the world through the simplicity of Marxist power structures and skin-deep groupings, the diverse humanity of the gaming community is something DEI proponents find themselves unable to accept. In their endless hubris, they attempt to divide and agitate, using media and governmental connections while growing increasingly indignant and combative within the gaming community. Unlike past situations, where gamers have blinked and lost ground to those who would socially attack them from their bully pulpit without reprieve, they've recently held strong. This organic response to years of gaslighting has even drawn the attention of the American government itself, from the FBI to the DHS, hiding behind supposed media groups like Take This. Organizations have begun to spy on gamers, claiming to be investigating violent extremists, while telling new and interesting stories from less commonly seen cultures, or stories told from differing points of view, is hardly a bad idea. An obsession over social messaging has become the primary driving force in a game's creation. As history has borne out, DEI consultants simply do not encourage new stories and characters from diverse places like the African pantheon, of amazing mythological tales like Takar or Amadioha. Instead, simplistic pandering is shoehorned in, when they find themselves hamstrung by obsession with identity, preaching a particular message. Ultimately, they wind up creating an environment lacking the bravery to try new things, face realities, or see characters as flawed in any meaningful or relatable way. As seen in Alan Wake 2, Saga Anderson desperately suffers from a lack of depth beyond the more simplistic focus on her racially swapped inclusion to the game. Her true flaw is a reflection of the writer's unwillingness to have the character display legitimate weakness or experience relatable struggles, embracing all the hallmarks of a Mary Sue for fear of showing their racially praised character in any negative light is not only dehumanizing and condescending to the character on account of their perceived race, but also sets Saga up for failure. The character could have been truly interesting, yet ultimately falls flat as a simplistic exercise in checking a DEI box to appease their financiers. Consider the depth that could have been added to the character if her paranormal abilities, that she had grown to rely on in her work with the FBI, began failing her within this new case. What if she had found herself less intelligent than she had originally thought, having relied on her ability to read people psychically far more than she had been willing to admit, while being confronted by the deadly and sadistic forces of the dark place? Saga could have been relatable and engaging, inviting the player to confront how they might react in a situation, as over-reliance on one's perceived strengths is a common experience of humanity. Yet instead, they chose to make her perceptually flawless. They attempted to avoid every possible stereotype in adherence to their ideology, only to stumble right into a stereotypical trope. When analyzing the need to force such compliance into the creative process, often antagonistically in the case of companies like Sweet Baby Inc., the concept of unconscious inferiority complexes can provide a more human perspective on current events. According to the Austrian psychotherapist Alfred Adler, the feeling of inferiority is not inherently a disease, as such a state can actually work as a stimulant to healthy development and growth. Unfortunately, however, when the sense of inadequacy overwhelms an individual, it can lead to a sense of depression, making one unlikely to achieve productive development, not unlike playing Dark Souls for the first time. This can take the form of unhealthy overcompensation, traditionally seen in the need to feel superior by tearing others down. While some may not be led to directly diminish others in order to address their feelings of inferiority, they do often experience an outward and desperate narcissistic need to see themselves in everything, finding a sense of profound value in their personal representation. They seek to be praised endlessly in order to satiate their need for self-worth, and often struggle to connect with others that are not like them in their quest for self-insertion into everything they interact with, not unlike activists inside modern games journalism and design communities today. Hey, looks like Napoleon's got some competition. Such a disorder, as described by Ajo Smalls-Manti, is a condition where one inflates their feelings of self-worth and desperately needs others to admire and praise them to avoid reconciliation with reality. They are increasingly sensitive to any conflicting criticism due to the intrinsic cognitive dissonance of their unconscious overcompensation. Sadly, such an unhealthy need and intense projection can cement an individual experiencing such feelings of inadequacy. In such a state, one is left increasingly willing to accept shallow and inconsequential pandering done in placation, instead of receiving the actual respect and inclusion we all strive for as human beings. With AAA game development cycles growing longer and longer and impossibly more expensive, powerful financial backers are inevitably required. It's an unfortunate circumstance that opens many desperate developers up to the powerful influence of ESG financing and the exceedingly high chance of falling victim to whatever is in vogue at any given minute. Doing so allows developers not only to obtain financial resources to produce their lackluster gameplay loops, but the infusion of DEI into their game allows disingenuous developers to hide behind the proverbial shield of social groupings and claims of progress to brand anyone who does not like their creation as hateful or bigoted in some way, even in the face of valid criticism of their game. In many cases, they could care less about creating nuanced characters with varying backgrounds and perspectives, and are simply looking for protection from criticism, not unlike the looping dimensional spiral found in Alan Wake, wherein he must live through that which he writes by his own hand in the dark place, embodying the very catalyst of his woes. Developers that create shallow games must ultimately face the consequences of their designs. And yet, the traditional concepts of diversity and inclusion, the love of variety and non-homogeneity, the addition of new members into the community, and a healthy curiosity has always been at the core of the gaming community. And when outsiders come from the dark place, it's best to fight back. Thank you for watching Deep Thoughts While Gaming. And remember, if you don't hit that like button, you're the oppressor. Did you like this episode of Deep Thoughts While Gaming? Then consider supporting more by joining the channel. Not only will you be helping fund more episodes, you'll get access to exclusive emojis, a Discord server, live streams, videos, and my promise that you will always be on the right side of history. And check out this video about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League and why communists always kill your heroes.